Hi everyone. Um, Welcome to the first day of my 5-day series, Me, Myself, and My Mental Health Story. So I was debating a lot about the title of this, and it was going to be Me, Myself, and a Mental Health Survival Story. But I feel like I can't say I've survived something if it's an ongoing thing, and it will be most likely ongoing forever, really. So we've gone with Me, Myself, and a Mental Health Story. So I don't plan for these to be too long because I know everyone's busy and no one wants to listen to me ramble on forever. So I wanted to talk about the beginning of how I found out about mental health, or how I realised I had some really severe mental health problems and that I needed to seek help with them. So, firstly, I am not a preachy person. People who preach to me drive me nuts. I cannot tell you how many times when people have said, oh, just smile, or, take a day off and you'll feel so much better. And no, don't proceed to tell me what I should or shouldn't do to feel better. I mean, I know that most of the time they mean it from a good place, but it's not. I will say that there are trigger warnings, that I want to have a trigger warning on all of these videos, because I am going to touch upon some of the my darker thoughts and experiences with mental health. So be warned. Right, so when was I diagnosed? Long and short of it was, I wasn't really. I mean, I have a chronic pain condition which I was diagnosed with when I was 17. And I say diagnosed, when I started to feel very unwell, and it took them about 2 years to finally decide on a diagnosis, which was endometriosis and adenomyosis. And for 2 years, they were misdiagnosing me with things. They were saying, oh, it's IBS. You're not eating right. You're just really constipated, or, you're not sort of constipated enough. And so they would prescribe medications for that, back and forth, to try and even it out. So I was happily going along these lines, but then I was having extraordinarily bad period pain and things, and on the week of my period I'd end up literally in A&E on a morphine drip, and they'd be like, well, we can't give you anything to take home, so they discharge me, and then I'd literally just be back the next day because paracetamol didn't help, codeine didn't help. Anyway, this obviously had an effect on my mental health, but because I got diagnosed and was then being treated through surgery and through consultants, it sort of fell by the wayside a bit. The other side, so the physical side, was well and truly taken care of. I had every medical opinion. I was very young to be diagnosed with it. I was very rare. So, there was all of these people who were involved, doctors, but nobody actually ever asked how I was doing mentally. So if I'd say, oh, I'm feeling really miserable, it would always be attributed to pain. So we'll give you more painkillers. So the less pain you're in, the happier you'll be, seemed to be the general thought of most doctors. And me, being about 18 then, having absolutely no idea, I've been taught, that doctors know best. So I started attributing every negative feeling, or every severe negative feeling, to my medical condition. which might have been a tiny bit unfair on my poor body. It was just trying to do its best. But everything. So I became quite resentful about being in pain all the time, not being able to do things that all my friends were doing. Someone asked me to go and do like one of those go ape days, and I was like, well, I can't. I was like, I can't stand up for that long without my pain going off. I can't. And then, so once I was declining going out, that obviously was what I now know was depression. It was feeding into that. All the things I couldn't do that I was attributing to my condition. Oh, when I have surgery, I'll be able to do this. Oh, when this flare up settles down, I'll be able to go out again. I'll be able to go clubbing with everyone because I was at 18, 19. I'll be able to do all of these things. But eventually, after about 2 surgeries and various other things, I was not in pain for a little while. It's going to keep coming back anyway, the pain, regardless, sort of forever and ever. It's going to, every 2 to 3 years, I'll have to have surgery to cope with it, which I came to terms with very early on. I came to terms when I was also told when I was like 17 and 18 that I would never be able to have children because of my endometriosis. And that was fine, or I thought I dealt with all of these issues and that I was just happily going along. I went to university, I was at university, I was just like, yeah, once this flare up passes, once I have my next surgery, there was always an but when. So everything. So all of those things that feed into depression, isolation, not eating properly, not looking after yourself properly, sort of shutting down when talking to people, not easily making connections, not wanting to make connections, all of those things which come with depression and anxiety was all being put on. It's okay. In 6 months when I have my next surgery, in 3 months when I have my next surgery, I'll feel better, I'll feel better, I'll feel better, I'll feel fine. And that time never came. After the surgery, I wasn't feeling better. I wasn't suddenly miraculously being like, yes, I want to go out again. Yes, I want to do this. Because it wasn't just the pain. Obviously, the pain and the limit it had on my life was affecting my mental health. Of course it was. But I was never dealing with it. So it was just, so what I now know is through like lots of therapy and CPD and cognitive behavioral therapy and IPT, interpersonal therapy and things. I've gone through all of this now so I can identify triggers, like I said, things that set me off, how to, interrupt those triggers and all the buzzwords you can think of or Google. And I can describe it all very academically. But academics is all well and good, but doesn't help you when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you haven't slept for 4 days and you have lost the will to do anything, where you're honestly thinking that the world would be better off if you weren't in it. And I was there. I've been there. I still go there now. I still have those days. But we're only focusing on sort of the beginning of my story today. And the first time that I felt genuinely suicidal was when I was 19. And I was in pain yet again. I'd been to A&E yet again and prescribed very tramadol and more Oromorph, which is basically like morphine you can take at home. And it was like, oh yeah, we'll have another follow up in a couple of weeks. And it was just, I honestly thought it was never ending. I thought, what is the point of this? What is the point of this? Going along, can't do anything, can't go out. Again, I was attributing this to pain, but it wasn't. But I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to do anything. They were saying I was going to have more surgeries and things. And it was just like, what is the point? What is the point of putting up with all of this? I don't know if I can swear. I don't know. It's too early to swear, isn't it? But how can I put up with all of this shit every day and just be expected to keep going? Why is everybody acting like this is fine? Why is everyone acting like, oh yeah, it's fine, I'm going, right? Everyone's getting up, they're going to work, they're eating dinner, they're having drinks. It's like, how are you people doing this? How, like, and I still don't 100% get it, but people were just going about life just fine. And there was me, literally just, and I mean literally, staring at the array of painkillers I had in front of me and just like, I'm never going to understand it. I'm never going to understand how these people are doing it. I couldn't remember a time where I didn't feel that way. I was so deep down the dark rabbit hole of depression and misery that, like, there was literally no light. It was just dark, me, and something incredibly heavy. And if you spoke to any of my friends or family, they'd say that I joke quite a lot about serious matters. And that's why, because when you're that dark and that low and everyone is just expecting you to be all right, the best way to shut them down and get them to leave you alone is pretend everything's fine or smile. I can literally smile through telling I could tell you my terrible, terrible, darkest thoughts with a happy smile on my face, and you would never know because people take things at face value. So, me saying, oh, yeah, I was completely suicidal last night, people don't register the words, they register your facial expression, your body language. And that's what they take. So, no one's really listening. Well, they do eventually if you say it enough times, but obviously most of the time you just want to be left alone, so you don't. So you sit there in your dark, dark rabbit hole and you try and think, oh, when are my parents not home? When am I going to be left alone for a long enough time? And this is something I can say now, which I probably could. Actually, I could probably say it back then, but I wouldn't have the confidence to say it. A therapist asked me once, they said, oh, have you ever attempted to kill yourself? And I said, no, I haven't. And this is genuine. I have never attempted it because I know I would succeed at it. The sort of person I am, the way my brain works, I've researched, very logically. I had a plan, a very logical plan, which couldn't be interfered with, how long you needed, certain medications to take effect before they were like irreversible, all sorts. I researched it to death, no pun intended, and literally. And so I said I would never attempt it because I'd succeeded. And she took that as a good sign, which I don't know how she took it as a good sign, but she took it as a good sign. I think, particularly early on in the NHS system of mental health, it's not their fault, but they were just like, okay, that's not an immediate problem. We don't have to immediately think of a way to intervene or something to put in place to stop that from happening because there hasn't been an attempt. It's like they have to check a box. But then she asked, oh, do you do anything else? Do you self-harm? And I was like, yeah, of course. I've been doing it since I was 14. And she was just like, wait, what? Oh, have you never spoken to anyone about it? No, why? Because to me, it was just normal. It was just a way to feel better. When I had those overwhelming thoughts and feelings and just like everything was too much, and I was like, you're so far gone, you can't even cry. You're just beyond expressing emotion at that point. You're just completely shut down. And there are two reasons that I have ever self-harm. One is to feel something. I'm so numb to feeling anything that I know it's bad and that I should be feeling something. And the only way to do that is to have a physical sensation. a physical sense of pain, which probably comes from the fact of me being in pain for so long. I attribute that to at least that's something. At least it's better than nothingness. And then the second reason, that is because I have too much emotion. I have too many things. I don't know how to deal with it, and it's all getting faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, and the tornado's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's a wicked witch flying by, getting crushed by a house, and Toto's long gone, swallowed up by the tornado, and like you need like a pressure release valve. That's how I describe it. When like a saucepan boils over, you need to take the lid off of it because it needs to escape. Some of that pressure has to escape, otherwise it's going to keep building and building and building and eventually explode. And that's what it was. There was nowhere for this emotion to go. It was just in my brain. So it was building and it was building and it was building and it was boiling over and bubbling over. And there was just no escape for it. So the only way to release that energy or that sort of anxiety was to physically do something. And in my case, it was to self-harm. I'm not going to say how I did self-harm or do self-harm or what my plans were, my suicide plans and other things, because I don't want to give anyone any ideas about if anybody is in that really low point. I don't want to sort of give them tips and tricks on how to succeed, because no, I'm aware that sometimes I'm aware that you shouldn't think that, or we shouldn't feel that way, or we shouldn't. I shouldn't say you or me. Anyone should feel that way. It's horrible. And that was the beginning of my journey, really, was being sort of just learning on my own, because still no doctors had diagnosed me. They said, oh yeah, you might, a side effect of chronic pain is depression. It was always talked about in abstract. Nobody actually ever said, oh, here's an antidepressant, here's an anti-anxiety medication, like they do now. Now they're throwing labels all over the place. Anyway, get to that later. That's later on in this week's series. I'm conscious of not going over 20 minutes, but my journey with mental health, the beginning of it was literally learning what depression was on my own, just through what I was feeling. Was suicidal thoughts. The main reason was knowing that I was going to achieve it, and I didn't want to put my family and my friends through that trauma. And working it out on my own and just dealing with it terribly, badly. So my beginning. And obviously it's different now. I've got much better coping mechanisms and much better systems in place. I've got safeguarding measures in place. And I'll get into more detail with it, but for anyone who is feeling particularly up in the air or low, I do recommend an immediate safeguarding technique, which is to have someone there. If you think you could do something, and like in and out, you can feel it coming. It's like a train. You can see it coming towards you, and you're like, oh, soon I'm going to be down that deep, dark rabbit hole. Then the easiest way is to have someone there with you. Ideally, someone who understands, but even if not, you're much less likely to do something if someone's watching you. Even if you don't tell them, if someone's there, you're much less likely to go and sneak off into a bathroom to go and, self-harm or whatever. You might have the tendency to get drunk, but in the immediate scheme of things, getting drunk is probably a better option. I shouldn't laugh. No. As I say, I cope with things through humour, dark humour. My friends call me a Disney princess. Well, some of my friends have called me a Disney princess with an edge, or a Disney princess with an alcohol problem. Which, as being described as something isn't the worst. Not the best, but it's not the worst. So yes, that is my beginning, how I started, beginning my journey down the road of mental health. and mental health prevention and help. Um, I would say, I'm going to say this is I want it. I should probably put it at the beginning as well. But if you feel anything from this, if this has triggered anything really negative, that the crisis helpline is brilliant. 111 is very good. And if you are full blown in the midst of doing something, 999 is fine. But one of those numbers, if in doubt, if you call 111, they'll put you through to the correct person. Either way, it's still someone to try and prevent anything too serious happening. And if you self-harm, as I've always been taught, particularly when I was younger, is that if you're going to self-harm, do it in a safe way. So if you are going to cut yourself, for example, don't do it near anything with a major artery or anything that could cause permanent damage. So, nowhere where there's like severe nerves. Everyone say if there's nerves everywhere, but nerve centres, anything sort of around major pulse points like jugular veins or anything like that. Like, it's, if in doubt, you can Google. And I'm not advocating saying that you should self-harm. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that if you do, that best to do it safely than risk something else happening. And people who struggle like me for 10 years or more with self-harming know how to, do it reasonably safely. Well, in the sense it's not going to be permanent. So, yes, that is me just being blunt and honest. And I know people are going to be really angry and say that I'm like perpetuating, like I'm advocating for self-harm or anything like that. I'm not. I'm just being blunt and honest and saying that if you do self-harm, you're not going to stop because I've told you to. And if anything I've said has triggered you, then just be aware. And people can hate me for it and criticize me, but it's the blunt truth. And many, many therapists would agree with me. I've been told by many psychiatrists that don't do it, but if you do it, do it safely. And that is my PSA for the day. But tomorrow I will be talking a bit more about sort of like later on when I sort of my depression sort of took on another, in your mid-20s, and how it affects you differently than when you're like 17 and 18, and then my journey through the NHS system and the private healthcare system. And I'll be talking more about specific things, like how mental health impacts relationships, particularly romantic relationships. And it's a double whammy of your medical condition also impacts your sexual relationships. So, yes, thank you for listening. I hope I haven't triggered anyone. And if I have, crisis line 111, be safe with whatever coping mechanisms you have, whatever self-soothing mechanisms you have, do them safely. Or if you are like super, super, super have absolutely no clue what to do message me or comment, and I will message you instantly with anything I can help with, numbers and everything, okay? So stay safe, everyone, and thanks so much.